And unless somebody would object, I'd like to give the representative a few minutes to talk and explain his bill maybe a little
Yeah.
bit, maybe the process.
Yeah, thank you, and I'll provide a great deal of information as it deals with the legislation moving forward. Look forward to either connecting with this group inside or outside of a meeting, and I'd be happy to provide a lot of that information. Dr. Lombardi, pleasure to finally meet you. Were you invited at any point in time to comment or discuss this legislation that we had worked on?
I was invited to comment on it, and I passed comment that PIAA does not have comment on legislation. That's outside our realm. I would not comment on anything that would be contrary to the wishes of the board.
Okay. I'm just confused. I thought you just commented on legislation here. But were you invited to a discussion to discuss in April the legislation that we had been working on?
Not that I know.
Do you have a
I don't recall
representative?
being a meeting.
Okay.
I don't recall being invited to a meeting.
Okay. Discussion and meeting are very similar. Do you have anyone that represents you here in Harrisburg? Is lobbying on here in the legislature?
Yes, we have legislative counsel.
And would it be appropriate to contact that legislative counsel in order to work as a conduit through you?
Sure.
Okay. If we were to send a message to that legislative council that would say, does this week sometime work for you? Is a phone call with your PIAA guys. If not, let's chat next week. Followed up with another message by me. Are they interested in discussing at some point in the very near future? I would like to figure out what our plans are if we involve them or not. And then a response back from that legislative council that says, I suggest you move forward. Would that be of surprise to you?
No.
Okay, so you were informed that invited to a discussion on the legislation.
I informed our legislative council prior to anything of that nature to say, we will not participate in the writing of legislation.
Okay. Thank you.
Further, just let me clarify something else as well. Representative Bernstine, you picked up the phone and you called the secretary in our office asking for numbers. I spoke to you on the phone directly.
That's correct.
If you wanted me to go to a meeting, why wouldn't you pick up the phone and just contact me? Because we've already had conversations. I don't understand why you would go through a conduit when you could just pick up the phone, because you and I already spoke.
Yeah, thank you. I would share with you that typically, and as many of these folks would share with you, we typically work through that legislative council, as you described, but I just wanted to make sure that that information was passed on to you. Next question would be, do you currently have the authority to separate playoffs between public and private schools today as legislation stands?
I do not believe we do.
Okay.
And neither does our board.
Okay, thank you. Does the current legislation that is there, does that provide you the authority to separate public and private? The legislation, House Bill 1600.
I haven't had the opportunity to really go through it. Mike and I haven't had the opportunity to sit down and discuss it.
Once you do have the opportunity to review it, would you be willing to provide me with the information of whether or not you believe that legislation provides you the opportunity to separate public and private?
I think my testimony here today says that we're not in favor of what is written in 1600 because of the other ramifications as well.
I understand. I didn't ask if you were in favor, Doctor. I just said, would you let us know if that would provide you the authority to do so, the ability to do so, if that legislation would? Thank you. Very last question I have would be, when a student decides to transfer, who makes that decision for the student athlete? Does a parent have to sign on and off on that? Is that
probably their parent or guardian? It probably starts right there.
okay? And depending on if that is by athletic intent or not, that student athlete would then maybe penalized or not penalized. Is that correct?
I think you're using old language. Athletic intent went out about 10 years ago. It's whether the transfer would be athletically motivated.
Okay, athletically motivated.
But because the transfer but for wouldn't occur for athletics.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of difference.
Sure, but so then that would be, the determination would be made by the PIAA whether or not that's athletically motivated or not, correct?
That's incorrect. It would start with the principal of the school,
Okay,
and they would determine their eligibility based upon the bylaws that are adopted by all the schools. If they find it would be adverse, they can appeal that to
Okay.
the district committee.
thank you. And then, once the district committee, they obviously have the ability to appeal that beyond, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Doctor, and I appreciate the opportunity to ask you some questions. I wish we would have that opportunity when we were formulating legislation. Listen, as we work through our legislation, without a doubt, do I think it's perfect? I don't. I don't think it's perfect. I think there's an opportunity to make it better and to make it perfect. And I think what I would say is, Doctor, after attempting since April to discuss the legislation with you, I'd welcome you back to the table for a third time. And I would hope that you and your team would be willing to engage in that conversation and work within the confines of the PIAA in order to put students first. While I don't agree with many of the decisions that the PIAA makes, I think the intent is noble. And I think that what you folks try to do is very important. So I look forward to working with you, and I would hope that the third time's a charm, and we would welcome you to the table to engage in that conversation.
Representative Bernstine, in conclusion from my side, I believe, and I would like to correct your statement, we treat all student athletes equally and fairly, and we're consistent with the rules that we have and the individual assessments that are made at every level. So I disagree with your intent that we're not doing that.
Well, thank you for your opinion.
Okay, anybody else have any questions for Aaron? Representative Matzey?
I think it just needs to be stated again, and I'm not sure if Representative Bernstine was here when I made my comments earlier, or at the start of my comments. I think one of the questions and one of the concerns with putting forth legislation, in my judgment, and I look at this from a variety of different ways. I've covered high school athletics for 31 years, and as a reporter, as an announcer. I've been in the legislature 10 years. In my 11th year prior to that, I worked in the Senate for 14 years. My boss was on the original Oversight Committee, so I have familiarity with the Oversight Committee. Been on this committee now 9 years. And I have to say that one of my concerns is when the General Assembly gets involved legislatively to dictate, specifically as it relates to the fact that the PIAA is a 501c3, and they are a volunteer organization. You don't have to join. You don't have to participate in championships. And I've had conversations with a variety of principals and athletic directors and coaches, and sometimes they agree, sometimes they disagree, relative to how things are operated at that level. But I will say that I think a lot of what could occur out of maybe changing or looking at making changes could occur within the confines of the existing structure of the PIAA as it pertains to the board itself, in having conversations relative to how it's perceived by those folks who have boots on the ground, the athletic directors, the coaches, the administrators, rather than look at doing something from a legislative process at this particular time. That's just my personal opinion and my judgment. I think that you know, whether or not a committee could be formed relative to the PIAA or not, I mean, again, it's a membership-driven organization, and they can vote to do something themselves, similar to how we lobby each other to support and or vote on behalf of a particular policy issue. So I'm hopeful that if nothing else, Representative Bernstine's legislation gets that conversation started, and so we can continue to have dialogue, because I think that's just as important as passing a bill, because it's all about the student athlete and giving them every opportunity to perform and have that ability to participate, because I truly believe in athletics and believe that athletics are a central role in a child's development, especially through K through 12. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Representative Matzey. And just to add to that, I agree. trust me, this isn't necessarily what I want to be spending all my time on. You know, we have some big stuff going on in Beaver County that I'm proud to partner with you on many of those issues. The issue is since 1972, we've been really working to have significant changes made. So, like I said, I'd welcome them to the table. I'd welcome the PIAA to the table for the third time, and we're hopeful that they take up the opportunity this time to engage in that debate.
Okay, Aaron, just a comment on, you know, your testimony. I know you asked Dr. Lombardi a few times about, you reached out to him to participate in this process. And, you know, we've been together for 15 years, and I don't think you reached out to anybody on this committee to participate in what you were doing. Now, you know, that said, you know, that's certainly not a requirement. But, you know, I just can't say I'm just a little bit disappointed that, you know, the first I heard about this was last Tuesday when you had the press conference, and didn't get a copy of the bill till Thursday. And I don't mind saying, because I see some members of the Catholic Conference out there, that I'm a little disappointed in the Catholic Conference. Because I think I've worked, myself and the committee have worked very well with them through the years, and we were not contacted by them either, letting us know that you were working on something or working on an agreement. But that said, I mean, you know, you have every right to introduce a bill. You know, that's your right as any other member, and I would hope that maybe moving forward we'd be able to work together on, you know, what's going to happen. So we just throw that offer out there to you. And
Chairman DiGirolamo, this is, I have a question for you. And my reluctance to work with Representative, or meet with Representative Bernstine's fully centers around the fact that I was here when your group was developed. And we have been instructed and directed that you are the Oversight Committee for Interscholastic Athletics, and any type of conversation of those areas should come through you. So I'm reluctant to work with another group that may not be respectful of your process or you folks involved. Senator Martin said it best. We've met, we've had a number of conversations, but he's part of your committee and he reports to you. So that's my reluctance. If you want to give me direction on that, I'll take it. But I think that what we have set up has worked very, very well since 2004. And I would hate to have diverging, converging, any type of verging messages.
okay, unless anybody has any, Senator Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think everyone should be welcome in terms of having these conversations as to what to do best for our student athletes. And I think there's always going to be breakdowns in communication. I always know there's going to be groups that try one avenue, and if they don't get the avenue they want, they might try a different angle. I get that. You know, my view on high school athletics, it's an ever-evolving thing as we try to level the playing field, or how we expand sports. I'm still making that plug for women's wrestling, by the way. But anyways, I think you admitted earlier that even as we gather information on the new system that, you know, was put into place and we got the stakeholders to get involved in, is that you even foresee and your board foresees tweaks that are coming on the horizon too. And I just say that from the standpoint of I think everyone wants what's in the best interest of the student athletes. I think everyone does not want to see recruiting out of control and creating Super Bowl caliber sports teams whenever they can. I think we can all rally around that. And I just hope we all are part of the same conversations because we have different constituencies out there. They're always at each other, or they don't like the rotation of who plays who in the first round of the playoffs, whatever it might be. But I'm eager to continue those conversations and what's the best interest of our kids. So.
Okay, that said, seeing no further questions, I'm going to adjourn this meeting of the PIAA Oversight Committee and thank everybody for being here.